Okay, so one of the links to the surge in violence amongst school children is emotional distress. Judine Webb, Children's Officer at the Child Protection and Family Services Agency, joins us now to provide guidance for parents, caregivers and educators on effective response strategies for emotionally distressed children. Morning.
Good morning.
Welcome to Smart Jamaica. It's so good to have you.
Thanks for having me.
Whoa, it's good for us to underscore the underlying issue that is causing this super, incredible wave of violence that we're seeing going on in our schools. So let's start at the very beginning. Harris always says you must define the thing and know what you're talking about before we can move on. So when we speak of emotional distress, what exactly are we talking about?
All right, so to put things in context, the brain is such a complex organ, and especially one that has been predisposed to traumatic events. We want to go to the baseline, the grassroots, which for me is family. We know that family is the first entity of socialization, and so when parents have their own burdens, their own stressors, they act this out in front of children, not realizing that they're setting them up for failure in the future. They have dysregulated emotions as they grow up because they believe how they see their parents deal with situation, that's the way to do it. And so for those who experience domestic violence, for example, they would eventually internalize these images that they would see replayed day after day after day. At the appropriate time when, the cup is full, they will lash out at their peers and, community members. And this is how we see emotional distress manifesting in children. It starts at a young age. And so even as early as two-year-olds, we see children displaying these, they're withdrawn and we wonder what's happening. They're crying a lot, but they are internalizing and trying to understand what is happening in their environment. As young as two.
Their little brains are trying to process.
Right.
You spoke of domestic violence. What about corporal
punishment? Of course, because many times we see it spilling over. So, for example, we have separation in families, and maybe the parent that the child is staying with can't deal, and so we lash out at the children. Oftentimes, domestic violence spills over to the children where they're caught in the middle, and they too are affected. And so we totally reject corporal punishment. We say find other means of disciplining children. There are so many alternatives. Back in the days, it used to be spare the rod, spoil the child, and everything has to be a beating. We're saying use other initiatives, connect with other parents, connect with the wider community to come up with other strategies in dealing with children who we claim to be uncontrollable or difficult children.
Judine, it begs for a larger discussion at another time, because I feel like a lot of the responses by the parent, what you're saying requires a thought-out response. Right. It requires you've done something that requires consequence, and this is what the consequence will be. But parents, some it happen and it just trigger me, and I'm just gonna do what I'm doing. So it's.
And largely sometimes because of what them go through too.
Correct. So why is it important for adults, I don't want to say parents alone, adults to recognize emotional distress in children?
All right, so early detection is key. Like in any diagnosis, any situation, we find a problem, we treat immediately. So once a child, let's say they are exhibiting certain behaviors that can be linked to emotional distress, we can connect them to the necessary resources, psychotherapy, medication in some instances, because we know once stress level reaches a stage of distress, the child is borderline in depression, which is a mental disorder. So sometimes medications are necessary to treat. So once we incorporate these mechanisms, automatically the brain is being rewired to think differently, to handle distressful situation in a total different manner. And so if the child would flare up if someone would step on their toe or say something that brings them back to a point in their childhood where they were traumatized, they would diffuse the situation, they would think about it, they would try techniques that they would have learned in psychotherapy, such as deep breathing, stuff like that, counting, because they do work, they regulate the emotions and they can mitigate against future violence.
I feel sorry for the poor kiddos because they don't know what they're feeling. Oftentimes the adults don't know either, Judine, because they too haven't worked through their own trauma, which is why they're perpetuating it on their children.
Yeah.
So emotional distress in children is largely too about emotional distress in adults. So how do we work through that to be able to now reset them for the children? A lot of adults are just big children walking around with a lot of the hurt that they went through when they were kids.
And so we need to identify these signs early. We need to have discussions with children. Adults in general, like you say, we need to check in with them. We need to know what the signs are. We need to look at their baseline. So if the child was usually hyper and want to go to school, getting good grades, and, have general good friends, all of a sudden they're withdrawn, they're engaging in risk-taking behaviors, they're using alcohol, misusing drugs. So we need to take a look at some of these. Bear in mind that not all children will show signs. Some will just out of the blue, wherever you're just saying that, they surprised me. I never know that this child was like this. They're always so quiet. But, even for those who don't show signs, we need to know what to look out for and when to act.
You have resources and support services at the CPFSA. What are some of those resources?
All right. So at the Child Protection and Family Services Agency, we serve a particular clientele, right? And for those who are under our system, of course, we have psychotherapy readily available for them. We do assessments. We do play therapy. We also have our psychiatrists who may treat through medication depending on the severity of the issue that the child presents with. We have the Smile Mobile. They act as a mobile mental health bus with psychologists that go around, and they also act in first respond cases. So if there's a fire somewhere, burn on a child is in distress, they will go into the community to provide first-hand intervention. All right, for persons who are not a part of our clientele, we do offer services through our child and family support unit, where the child or the family is referred to one of our counselors who will work with them as a family, as a unit, and they will go into the schools, into the community to provide the help that they so require. If in case that they need to be referred to our external partners, we do that. We have the Child Guidance Clinic that we work closely with. We encourage persons to go to your healthcare provider, ask them for a referral, go to the Child Guidance Clinic. Whatever interventions that the psychiatrist or the psychologist may apply, we work through it. We have a taboo that, if a child is diagnosed with a mental illness and they're given medication, we don't administer or even the full dose. And I keep saying, just like going to the doctor, if you are ill, the doctor will say, continue on your course of medication. If there are side effects, come back, let's talk about it. But we have a way of pulling away the medication. We stop going to therapy. We're only making the children worse. So we're saying adults in general, right? So I'm just, categorizing. And so we need to, so as adults, we need to take responsibility. We need to ensure that our children receive the correct and proper treatment that they need and follow through with treatment.
Judine, what are some of the things you're hearing from the children? Because yesterday we were having this same discussion about corporal punishment and what it does to our kids. And Nev was saying that he saw a young woman hitting her child, and he went over and he said to her, you shouldn't box the child, apparently, in front of, at school. And he said to her, you shouldn't do that. And she said to him, but you don't understand that the uncle thing, the picnic understand. The only thing that can get him to what are we doing to our children when we inflict that kind of violence on them? What have they told you in terms of how they feel when it happens?
Well, like any human being, they're emotional human beings, and their feelings should be considered. Children who go through traumatic experiences, violence, sometimes the parents is the only way, like you said, they believe that the child will learn or cope, but they just need someone to talk to. They will say that mommy don't listen or daddy's not listening. They always take one side of the story. And sometimes when they come to us, they believe that we're not listening. That's why we have to take them apart and we say, listen, I'm here for you. I'm listening and I'm hearing what you're saying. And so sometimes they feel like we side, parents, adults, they side with each other, but they just need someone to listen to them to see from their perspective. We have to say to adults, you were there too. You were a teenager too. You were there. I have seen it on the road. I see a mother on the phone. Where you're there, she's on the phone talking to her child. And when me see her, what I'm going nothing to do with you. We only know how to treat with violence, and we're saying we need to break away from that cycle because we're teaching our children to solve problems through violence.
I know, from your experience, what are some of the measures that schools and even communities can put in place, Judine, to assist?
I know one time in my community, there's always a community center. You know, we are going around in communities, the buildings are there, but they're empty. No one is taking on the mantle to, you know, revamp persons, get persons to come on board and start community projects. So I think that is a big step. You know, the police youth clubs are there. You know, persons need to send their children to these activities. It keeps them in line. It gives them another outlook online. It teaches them other skills as well, right? The church is there as well. I say that the pastors, they need to be upfront more, you know, pull in the families so that they can attend Sunday schools, attend to learn, you know, how to deal with conflicts and so on, and wider just general morals and values. Right. Yeah. And even at schools, I believe that stronger mentorship programs should be in schools, sustainable ones, not just here today and for the next set that comes in, they're absent. You know, we need sustainable mentorship programs. And in school, we need to teach stress management skills, not saying that they are not, but obviously we need to revamp, you know, for children to have an avenue to express themselves, whether through speech, whether through writing, drawing, whatever it is, because they have an outlet, they need that outlet, so we should create this space for them.
The days of seen and not heard are over. We need to communicate with our children. Any specific programs, initiatives you want to highlight, and how do we get in touch with the CPFSA if we need to reach you guys? All
right, so our numbers, we have a website, Child Protection, at gov.org. You can send an email to info@childprotection.gov. You can visit our websites, and like I say, you can report cases of abuse, or if a child wants to call just to report or to say what's happening, call 211, our hotline. All right, so we are accessible. Our office are 14 parishes in Jamaica. In Kingston here, we're at 48 Duke Street. You can come in, you can speak to one of our counselors, one of our social workers, and we are ready to assist.
I'll tell you something. When we do not allow our children to be heard, they are going to make us see them. So we have to be careful when we say children are to be seen and not heard. Because some of the things they're doing is for us to see.
That's correct.
So we have to change
the way we approach children. A word, Harris. Yeah. Well said. Well said. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Lots of information. Thank you for being here this morning
and
sharing that. Folks, I hope you were listening because Judine dropped some serious gems this morning. Judine Webb Brown, Children's Officer at the Child Protection and Family Services Agency.
Yeah, after the break, we take a look at how a young lady employs modern methods for sustainable agriculture on her farm. I wonder if she bring a pak chow come this morning.
Why thought to be pak chow? Why pak chow?
I wonder if she